right, and good evening, everybody, and welcome to Train World TV. And tonight we have another very special virtual live event, and it is the Charger Thanksgiving. Everybody's charged and hyped, so it was I think very good timing, and the new release of everything. It was just perfect to have a Bachmann charged Thanksgiving. And we have a couple of great guests here tonight. And we'll go around the horn if everybody wants to say their name.
Hi, I'm Larry Harrington from Bachmann Trains.
I'm Dan Mischio from Train Control Systems.
I'm Tony Cook from Model Railroad News Magazine.
All right. And I'm Ken Bianco from Train World. And I'm excited because tonight it's the probably engine of the year, Larry. I have to say, Bachmann did a absolute unbelievable job. So many features with this engine, and I'm just gonna give everybody a sneak peek. This is one of the Charger engines that we're talking about, and that's another paint scheme. And I'm gonna kick it off to Larry, and we could have Larry talk a little bit more about how it came about.
Hi, Ken. Well, thanks for having us, first of all. This is a great event that you guys doing. We appreciate it. Gives us a chance to showcase everything and explain the product. The Charger has been an amazing journey from the beginning. We teamed up with Siemens originally, and they really helped us a lot, supplying the engineering information. They helped us get a recording session at the TTCI testing facility, and gave us paint diagrams, anything we had questions on. They gave us actual engineering drawings that we were able to use for our model. That was the first step. When we did this, we got had to convert it into a model. Of course, you can't just scale things down. You have to make them work in a model railroading world. Some things are a little bit bigger. You have to make the trucks turn on more tighter turns. Lots of things you have to think about. So I'm going to show you what we started with here. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll show you. So after we accumulated all that information and went back and forth with Siemens, we got our engineers. They actually came up with the so the 3D rendering that we get to review and check all the parts, all the details. We look at it. We can zoom in. We can make sure the internal parts. I can hide certain parts.
Now, how long of a project was this, Larry?
This started back in, I guess, 2018. We really started looking at it, and we got, I think we officially announced it in I forget the exact. We either announced in 2018 or 2019, but we had it at NMRA in Salt Lake City, and actually after NMRA, we went out to the TTCI facility and did the recording sessions there for 2 days. So as you can see, you can look at all sides of the model here. This is spend a lot of time doing this. We, like I said, we go back and forth with the engineers. Have any questions? One thing unique to the Charger is that this bronze area here is the only thing that really Siemens customizes on the locomotive. So in addition to the add-on spoiler that the Surfliner has, but the rest of the locomotive is pretty much standard as delivered. So if you look at some of the other models, you got the Brightline, you have the Via coming out. Amtrak's going to have their own version of the locomotive. This will be pretty much the only area that's significantly different. There might be a couple of different positions of radio antennas and some other things, but for the most part, it's a standard locomotive. So, that was first step. Once we got that, then we went to got the paint diagrams and such from Siemens and Amtrak, and I'll show you. Oh, I'm doing the wrong thing here. Excuse me. Share screen.
And while Larry's trying to get that up, we had a good question about when they're shipping. And we actually just got a large first batch shipment from Bachmann Trains probably last week. And we have, I believe, 3 of the road names. One of the road name is still not in yet. So we had a short shipment. So we're still expecting the next container from Bachmann, hopefully arriving shortly. So we'll get those, but we do have most of the numbers in stock.
Yeah, we're completely sold out. I mean, anybody who's got orders in, and we promised them, it's fine. But we have none available to sell in our warehouse.
But Bachmann does have another container coming in with more. So if people still have outstanding pre-orders on that one number, don't worry, your order's still coming in.
Sure, yeah.
Time.
Yeah, we are going to fill back orders for dealers and such.
You're going to start the panic, Larry. People want their trains.
Well, they better buy them now if they want it for Christmas.
I saw Tony sweating there. He just broke out into a sweat.
But this was when we went out to TCCI. I'm showing you some of the photos. We made sure we got all the little labels and stuff. There's me sitting under the locomotive. I think it's the only time I've ever done that.
Wow.
And then the next step is we make detailed paint diagrams. You can see we have every little thing called out, colors, little graphics. We do that for the top, bottom.
Now, Larry, can you just go back one slide?
Sure.
Now, I think one of the coolest parts of this engine is this corridor, or work corridor that Dan was talking about earlier. Can you just explain to everybody out there, I guess, what exactly it is, how you, I guess, made it into your model? And we'll zoom in a little later, but you could actually see through on the model. So
yeah, I'll show you details when I show you the actual model. But
okay,
this area here is a big bank of radiators, the cooling radiators. And the vents are pretty big. I mean, you can see through the actual screening of the vents. So when they're working inside the locomotive, they turn a light on. So one of the unique features of this locomotive is when it's dark and it's riding down the track, you can see this thing is all lit up, which is a pretty unique feature. So that was a big challenge for us. First of all, we've done things with etched metal parts and such, but the screening was such a fine screening that we've had difficulty attaching it to the model without being warped or actually showing that it was a separate part. So we came out with a pretty cool way of doing this. These triangles and the rectangle here are all made out of a clear plastic material, and then what we did is a process called, when we print like letters and labeling, it's called tampo printing. We actually tampo printed the screen pattern over top of the plastic part, so it's clear, you can see through it, but it actually has the screen detail printed on top. And then inside of the locomotive itself, we have a printed graphic of the internal workings of the locomotive. And then above is the actual LEDs that illuminate it. That was another thing we worked with TCS, because this locomotive has 10 actual lighting outputs, which you can't even buy a stock decoder with 10 outputs. So we had specially made this decoder for us. We have you have headlights. We had to actually share the headlight and the destination board with the same output because we ran out. We have that, and then we have the if you look, we have the headlights, we have the marker lights, we have the number boards, we have the strobes up top with the emergency strobe, we have the marker lights on the back, the rear headlights, and the ditch lights. And the ditch lights have to be independent so they can alternate back and forth when they blow the horn and ring the bell. So that's part of the thing. We also added a good number of add-on details as well for the model. We have add-on mirrors. We have grab irons and grab rails throughout the model. Like I said, a lot of the sanding lines, all that stuff is, and even on the Surfliner, we added the air dam for the top of the locomotive.
Interesting. Okay. Wow.
So,
Yeah, one of
Very
my
cool.
favorite features about these, aside from the screening on the side, is actually they're not really grab irons, but they're like flues along the side on the top of the model. And I don't remember exactly what they're for, but the detail and how fine they are and how well they actually show up on the model is very nice. It's one of my favorite things about it. It really gives the locomotive some definition instead of just being like a mailbox going down your track.
so then we did, like I said, we did a painting diagram for every locomotive, and that's all those. So I'm going to let Dan talk a little bit about the recording process. The next step after we got the model pretty much down pat for the tooling wise, when we went to start, we weren't even finished cutting the tool, and Dan and company, John, and we had Steve out with us at the time, and we set out to Boone, Colorado, to the TCCI testing facility. And Dan, you want to tell everybody how that went? Sure.
I'm actually going to share a video that we have and kind of talk over as it goes.
And so everybody's clear. Bachmann actually chose to use a TCS sound decoder for this engine, and they have some great sound decoders, and Dan's gonna show us as we speak.
Yeah, so you guys can see that. All right. So yeah, this is our trip out to Colorado. We landed in Pueblo and then drove out to the TTCI facility. This facility, if you're not familiar with it, it's one of the only high-speed rail facilities in the country. They have like a 4.5-mile loop of track, roughly, and they can get up to the top speeds of these engines, which these ones are rated to do up to 120 miles an hour, just like the ACS 64. And part of that is because they're based on the same chassis, or at least a very similar chassis. It's not identical. So you have the same sort of traction motors, you have the same sort of appearance to it, and it makes sense. They're manufactured by the same people, Siemens. And working with Siemens, we were able to get some of the documentation on how these things work from an electrical end of things. And that really helped us with our design process from like the decoder's perspective and how it operates. Here you can see the charger rolling around on that rail. It's very long, very straight, high speed rail, and these things can really get moving.
It's like a giant train layout.
Yeah,
it's
like
a big loop of track.
Yeah, it's not too dissimilar from if you have like a 4x8 sheet of plywood. You just put a big loop on it, and you just let your trains roll around in a circle all day. So here you can see this.
Can you just roll back to that corridor screenshot?
Sure.
This way we just show everybody out there. So Dan and Larry were on this engine, and right at this point, so this is what you see on the engine that
from the inside,
yeah. Dan, you called it the work corridor, right there.
Yeah, it's like a corridor. So the inside of the engine, you have this is coming from the back side to the front, so we're going towards it. In through here, this is where that cooling fan is, and here you can see the prime mover. We're walking right past it. And then you come past that up onto the front, and then you go through two isolation doors, and then you're in the cab. So the whole locomotive connects from front to back, and it's pretty easy to traverse. It's pretty roomy in there. And yeah, so these working lights.
So for big guys like me.
You can see them up top. They're LEDs, and you push a button on one end of the locomotive or the other, and it turns all the lights on. And you have illumination throughout the hallways that connect. You have the engine compartment, and also where the cooling tower is, for the cooling fans. And so all that is illuminated, and you can see that in the model where the cooling tower is on the model from Bachmann.
Very cool. I mean, this is also a sharp looking engine. I mean, Tony, I'm sure you could attest to that as a modeler yourself.
Oh, indeed. Yeah, these have been running. My assistant editor and I go down to Union Station in Kansas City to Railfan, and this is what runs the St. Louis, Kansas City trains. And yeah, ever since these hit, taking pictures of them and just oohing and ahhing and looking at them, they are really awesome locomotives. So I've really been looking forward to this coming out from Bachmann, and it is a fantastic looking model.
No doubt about that. So,
I can't believe those panels, the see-through panels, are actually tempo printed in plastic. In looking at those, I thought they were etched metal, Larry. That's amazing. That they were so good.
We actually did that on a Bachmann UK project a number of years ago. So I can't completely take credit for the idea, but they had an excursion car with a screen top to it, and that was actually curved screen, so that one was really difficult to manufacture without kinks and bends in its metal. So they did it first on that, and I was amazed how realistic it looked. So I said, well, let's try that on this, and then the other thing was getting enough space in there so that we could put the graphic behind it on the chassis and get enough. It took us a few attempts to get the lighting right, but I think it turned out pretty well.
And it looks fantastic. Dan, you talked about, or I think Larry mentioned there were 10 light outputs, and that was one of the things that just blew me away when I first started test running it. It's got the strobes. When you hit the horn, the ditch lights go back and forth like they do on Amtrak. I mean, this had to have been a bit of a challenge to get all this stuff together on that board. I mean, how intricate or elaborate is this compared to the average DCC board as far as lighting? I mean, certainly it's more than just headlights and number boards.
Yeah, so I mean, there is some legwork that we had to do on our end to get it to work with additional functions. Typically on our sound decoders, we go up to 8, and we've had that for quite some time. But with this model, we needed more than 8. So we had to specifically design a decoder that would both fit and function for this model, and that's exactly what we did. This is a very specified decoder specifically for this model. If you're so bold as to take off the shell, you'll be able to see that there is our decoder plus a joining board, which is used to send all the lighting functions out to the different parts of the model. But yeah, like you said, there's a lot of functions. There's 10 in total, 10 different separately controllable functions. And from that, you have the headlight, which also operates the destination board. And I'll actually back up the video here real quick so that you can see. While we were out there, we had the guys from Siemens go in and actually edit what the destination sign had on it. So here you see Larry in front of the locomotive with Bachmann on it.
Very cool.
And then after we had Bachmann on it, we had Wow Sound. And one of the really neat things is that Larry was able to get the production samples for both himself and for us to actually have the destination board say Bachmann and Wow Sound. So I actually have my model here.
I have mine here.
Pick up on the camera, but it actually says Wow Sound in the destination sign.
Wow.
So
there's something that I'm gonna have to collect, Ken. Look at that. They got these collector's items that I gotta have.
And they're the locomotive number that matched the one we tested out there too.
This was 4605 and 4606 that are latched up together, which were the ones that we had for the recording session. And my model,
I'm sorry to interrupt here, Dan, but we got really fortunate. There was actually, if you see, these don't have the markings on them yet, the IDOT markings on them yet. These weren't delivered yet to IDOT. There was, I think, 5 or 6 of them out there still in the TTCI. So this was a perfect opportunity for us to go out and actually, it's in the middle of nowhere. So we got the cleanest, crisp sound that we could possibly get. The only thing we had to watch out for was occasional other locomotive testing on the loop. And if you look right now in that, there was an engine house behind us. Well, some birds had taken up roost inside the engine house. So we had to get them to close the doors during the recording session so we wouldn't get the bird noises in the background. But you can see, Dan, you can go over the recording process. How many, was it 7 mics or 8 mics we used for the whole process? Or?
Yeah, so like Larry was saying, one of our sticking points when we're doing our recording is to make sure that we have very crisp, very clean, very high quality audio that we're recording to start with, because the better audio you have to start with, the better it sounds coming out of the model. Because especially for us, we're able to replicate exactly what we record and in the exact amount of detail that we can record it in. So any sort of artifacting or stuff that you hear, bird chirping, thunder in the distance, like everything. You can hear everything on these microphones that we use. And so it's very important to us that when we set up our recording sessions and setting up the microphones and stuff like that, that they're very directional, they're recording the right stuff, and that we don't have we try to eliminate as much of the background sound as we can. So yeah, this was great because, there's no birds. There's not really any insects. But we did have to close the bay doors on the engine shop because of the birds that were in there. So you can see here while this video is rolling, a couple of the microphones we have on booms and stuff like that are up above the locomotive. For this session, we used a total of 8 microphones. One of them was not used to actually record the engine; it was used to record us. But we have 7 different microphones which are individually recording different things on the engine all at the same time, and we can blend that together and mix it to make sure that we get a very good replication of what it actually sounds like. Because if you pick just one microphone, you can say, okay, well, this sounds good for this, but this isn't what it sounds like at all. And that's exactly what we do when we do our recordings and our editing on our sounds, is we try to replicate trackside as best as we can. And I'd like to think that we did a pretty good job.
You guys did an excellent job. We had, they were recording so many sounds. There's a zillion blowers on this locomotive. There's what was that one air filter thing that you air blower or something?
Yeah, they called it a dust blower.
Dust blower, yeah. That was very quiet, but we recorded it anyway. Yeah, we were there for 2 days. As you saw there, we had a thunderstorm that we had to tear down all the mics for a little bit, and that was a little bit hairy for a few moments there, carrying a 30-foot boom in your hand. But we made it through that, and we recorded, I think, about 6 hours the first day, and then another 4 hours the second day, something like that.
I know we were out there for a long time.
Yeah, and got everything that. The one thing that's kind of unique is that this locomotive, we had to fool the locomotive to do certain things because there's so many safety features built in to the locomotive. You had to turn off certain circuit breakers so you could get isolated sounds. Because if you're running we were testing it under load, but we weren't allowed to actually record while the locomotive was moving. So they would do a simulated load test so that we could run through all the notches in the prime mover. And so, the cooling fans would come on sometimes. So we had to stop, wait for the cooling fans to go through the process, and then re-record that section of the prime mover again. Like they did every transition
process without going too much into it. But yeah, we made sure that, and I had a personal hand in this, is making sure that every noise that this thing makes, we got it, number one, and number two, that the model makes that noise. So for example, like the air compressor on this thing, it's a 2-stage air compressor. And the audio file that plays back, if you listen to it when the air compressor kicks on, it has 2 distinct stages, when it turns on and when it turns back off again. And you also have things like the dust blower, which Larry mentioned, and that's, it plays that sound occasionally. Like every couple of minutes you'll hear it go psst, and then it's like an air spitter, but it definitely does have a unique sound to it. So it's not like we're just taking an air spitter sound and say, okay, sure, yeah, use that. Everything is specific to this model, including the dynamic brakes. This model, I'll talk a little bit about a feature on this model that's unique to it for now, is the dynamic brakes you can actually use on the decoder, just like in the real life locomotive, to actually bring it to a stop. You don't have to use the physical brakes. And so when you use the dynamic brakes on the decoder, it'll incrementally decrease the speed every time you use them, and you'll hear the sound for the blower kick on, and you can bring it to a stop with that. It's very cool, and yeah, it's like everything. It's got all the sounds, everything that it made, every noise that it made, we've got it. Another lighting feature, which kind of also ties into the sounds, is the emergency. If this locomotive goes into emergency, meaning you apply the brakes at 100%, or if you actually push the emergency stop button on your command station, it's going to do two things. It's going to play the emergency brake dump sound, which you just saw us recording there a moment ago, and also it's going to turn on the emergency beacon. And the way that it operates is exactly in accordance with Siemens's documents on how this thing works electronically. So that's one thing that we also paid very close attention to and made sure that it was as accurate to the real life locomotive as possible. Oh, here you can see the wow sound like I had mentioned from before.
Yeah, one other way for that emergency to be triggered is you have the crew alert feature set.
Yes.
If you have the crew alert feature that is on the old, after like 30 seconds, you will get a warning sound, and then it will get louder and louder and louder. If you don't do anything on your throttle, it'll kick into emergency at that point and shut it down as well.
And that's exactly like the prototype too. It's what they call penalty braking in the railroading industry. Is like if you have an engineer who like has a heart attack or whatever, it's a safety feature against that, where if nothing happens to the locomotive from the engineer's perspective, if they don't touch a throttle control, if they don't pull the horn, whatever, the locomotive will go into emergency after a period of time. And that would as well turn on the emergency strobe and bring the locomotive to a stop. It's a feature we've had in our decoders for a very long time, but this is the first time we've incorporated it with a light function and a sound function.
That's one thing a couple of users have mentioned, that they didn't know how to turn the crew alert off. So that's it's in the documentation. It's in the quick start guide. It's function 17, I believe. So it can be turned on or off. When it's turned on, you get a little, and that means it's on. And if you press it again, it's off. So.
And Dan, you say then it will respond when you're in that. Once you hit that 17, then it truly is like a real locomotive, that if you don't do something, it'll knock itself into emergency after so long?
Correct, yes. What you're going to hear when that feature turns on is an audible little beetle, 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 beetle. And then if it's going to get progressively louder, and after it gets to its loudest point, if you still haven't done anything, you haven't blown the horn, you haven't changed speed, you haven't touched any buttons, then it will apply the emergency brake and come to a stop. And it'll also turn on that emergency strobe.
That's very cool. It does announcements too, Ken. Did you know that? It'll do the...
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's got an announcement function thing too.
And I will say that Bachmann and TCS partnership is really great. And I mean, Dan was talking about how they actually record, which just goes to the quality and craftsmanship behind these trains now. I mean, you're not getting a blanket, this is a an electric diesel engine, let's just throw the regular sounds. I mean, Dan and Bachmann are teaming up. They went to the actual place where they have the engine. They had all these boom microphones, 7, 8 different microphones, getting all the sounds. They pick up the sounds of the bugs and insects. That's how in depth it is. I mean, it's wild stuff. So I know the trains are evolving so much from, and I'm sure Tony could attest to this, the days of Tycho or a cheap little engine on the track, to now Bachmann is coming out with these beautiful engines, and the sound with TCS, it's just evolved to something just it's a craftsmanship hobby. It's just gorgeous stuff.
This one, and now that when Dan showed all the microphones in the recording, Ken, it's hit me as I was sitting there testing this. I kept thinking how it had like a dimensional or an environmental type sound to it. Because a lot of, and as you say, even some of the early DCC sound equipped locomotives of say 20, 25 years ago, they were good, but it tended to have a sound that seemed all coming from one area, or
Right.
had kind of a condensed, it was compressed. This, when you have this on the track and you're listening to it, it is that environment or dimensional sound that, like when you're standing next to a real one, that you kind of have that reverberation or that feel. That it was one of the cleanest recordings I think I've ever heard of something. I mean, kudos to you guys, Dan, on the work you
Thank you.
did. It's,
Yeah.
I say it's one of those you have to stop and just like, wow, listen to that. It's so clean. It sounds great.
And
In
it's
addition
not
to,
like a lot of diesels. Usually you think about a diesel locomotive, you think about GP35s and stuff like that, and SD9s and whatnot. And you're used to the thump, 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 thump from really far away, lots of black smoke flying up all out everywhere. And, these locomotives are so new, they're Tier 4 compliant, and they've got all these blowers on them that's really what you hear. And so when you're listening to these things in real life or rolling by, we listen to like hours of run bys from these things over and over again off of YouTube and whatever we could find, just to see how these things sound in real life in order to replicate that best. So there's a balance of different sounds that we did, which is, if you're talking just about the prime mover, you're talking about like the engine sound itself, the exhaust, what it sounds like on the inside. We had microphones on the inside, we had microphones on the outside, so you got a blend of that. You got all the different blower and fan noises, and then you've also got the turbo. We had one directly on the turbo too, and all of that blends together to make a different dynamic sound as it changes. So as it's going faster, you start hearing more of those blowers kick in, you start hearing more wind noise. You stop hearing less of the thump thump because you're starting to hear more of the turbo, all that sort of stuff. It all blends together. And, like I said, when we do our recordings, or I shouldn't say when we do our recordings, when we do our sound editing, we do it basically exactly how we record it. It's just finding a balance that sounds more realistic. And that's exactly what we did. And then there's one other feature in this model that's unique to it, which is we actually have traction motor recordings, and we play that over top of everything else. So as this locomotive starts out, as it increases in speed, once it hits a certain threshold, you start to hear the traction motor kind of sound a little bit different. It starts making more like a gearbox noise, less like an AC motor type of noise. So that was one of the things that I very much enjoy listening to in this model, because you listen to a lot of run-bys on locomotives, diesel locomotives, and one of the things that you don't always think about, but you always kind of hear, is the traction motors. And that's not something that's really been captured very well in decoders to date, and that's one thing that we paid special attention to in this model. Since it is based on a similar chassis and uses the exact same traction motors as the ACS 64, we were able to use that material as well to use it in this model. And
then going back, TCS and us teamed up first time with the ACS 64, and we were able to get some recording sessions with both Amtrak and SEPTA, and they got a good amount of material with that as well. So that was, that was our first project that we worked on together, and that one was pretty complicated too. It had only a few less lighting functions, but as far as all the sounds, they had to do the same process with the ACS 64 as they did with the Charger. And then, it was helpful that they had the traction motors, because then they were able to blend that. Because like I said, we weren't able to move the locomotive while we were recording. It had to be stationary. So and I remember the first iteration, John, the owner of the company, he wasn't happy with the sound mix, and they did the whole thing over again. I'm sure you know about that, Dan, right?
Yep.
All too well,
I'm
right?
glad you did, because it was definitely better.
It turned out excellent. Yeah,
it turned out much better, very much better.
Yep.
Now, Tony Cook is from Model Railroad News, and their magazine is just phenomenal. I read it, ritual with my morning coffee every month. Now, Tony, what's the inside scoop? What are people saying out there about this model? I know it's only been out a week, but have you heard the feedback, or are you gonna give us a little insights from your next article?
The best thing I can say now is I can finally answer people's emails and messages and say, Yes, it's available, or it's here. Because that has been the question for the last year. Is that out yet? How close is that coming? Is it going to be here soon? Because when you talk about an anticipated model, I mean, this truly was, because it's a state of the art, brand new Amtrak. This is going to be their standard motive power going forward. They've got an order coming up for more of these. So this is all I feel like I've heard for the last year is, hey, is that Charger out from Bachmann yet? And I kept thinking, man, I hope it's going to be an awesome model when it gets here. And it is truly an amazing piece. As I say, we're going to have a review of it first quarter, this Midwest version. And our Aaron Adams, a reviewer out in Washington State, has got the Cascades version, and he'll be reviewing it. The question, and I don't know if Larry can speak to this at all, but I know I saw a post recently of someone asking about a Williams one. But naturally, I think my next question after is it available yet is guys asking me, what about N-scale?
I'm on board for that. I'm an N-scaler myself, and I agree.
O-scale or N-scale, that would be exciting, Larry.
Well, we can't show all our cards, but we always like to get feedback from our. That's the one thing missing in this age of COVID is going to the shows. Really miss talking to everybody. And they give us a lot of ideas, a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones, but we do get feedback and we listen to it all. That's incredibly important. During this process, we went and got feedback from the expert modelers out there. Just shout out to the Facebook Amtrak modelers group out there. And I posted photographs of the progress along the way, and they said, this doesn't look right. That's something's. And we went back and we double checked some things. And one of the positions on the Surfliner, remember the numbers, the cab number was in the wrong position. It was in the right position on the painting diagram, but when we actually got the physical sample back, it was wrong. So that's one thing. We check it every step of the way. We have a pre-production model. We have any modifications to the pre-production model, and then we also get the final production before. And this being such a detailed model, usually we get the model airship to us as the production's finished, and then we have it 30 days before. I insisted that we got these models airship before they completed production. So if there was any issues that they had to correct them right away. So we didn't have to worry about, we get them when we get in, we look them over, we run them. I tested all 4 models when I got it, and they were just incredible.
And I will say, as Tony had a great question before, let's put Larry's feet to the fire, and everybody out there, just comment if you want to see it in N-scale, O-scale. Just comment, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook. Let's make Bachmann, Williams, make this and just show the love out there, and let's make sure Larry really puts it answers Tony's question and gets it made.
Well, there's one question. I get that question all the time. When are you going to make this? When are you going to make that? My question is, I can't tell you. I'm going to try to make every model that ever existed. I just can't tell you when.
Now, Ken, the other thing too, and I don't have them here in front of me, but in the last year, Bachmann brought out a new run, because the next thing, you got this fantastic locomotive, but you're going to run it around by itself. There's a new run of Bachmann and fleet cars. Yep. And they've been upgraded recently. We've got a review that'll be in that same issue, first quarter of 2021, for the new Amfleet cars, which come in a couple of different schemes of contemporary Amtrak looks. So both the Bud coach and the cafe car. And I know you guys at Train World will have them. If you probably already have them, I think, because they've been out for a while. But there are cars ready to go for the new Charger.
Tony, you're on fire. You read my mind. You're 10 steps ahead of me.
Well, you guys have been paying attention, and we already announced that we're going to do the venture cars when we announced the ACS 64. So, and the Charger. So it's coming. The cars that are used for a couple of the roads, and Amtrak long haul is going to be replacing them. Midwest already has some in service. Amtrak California's got a few in service. So, and Via and Brightline also. So anything's possible. Just a matter of time and getting licensing with all the particular Department of Transportation. So we're we're always working towards new products.
Bachmann has always been a great friend to Amtrak. In fact, I don't know if it's this issue I have behind me of Model Railroad News. That's January of a year ago, 2 years ago almost, 2019. And we did the electric is on the cover. And I think I did like in the back from the archive section, I kind of went over Bachmann's relationship with like Amtrak models. Because when you think of some of the landmark things that Amtrak's operated, Bachmann is one of the Metro liners. That was one of the first things I bought. I had a jar full of change that I took to a Woolco in Illinois and dumped on the counter to buy a Bachmann Metro liner when I was about 8 years old. And Ken, I know you know the story that when I got my first credit card, I bought 4 F40s at Bachmann from you guys at Train World. That was the first thing I did with the first credit card I got in the early 80s. So, Bachmann and Amtrak go hand in hand. They've done fantastic models over the years. You could do nothing but collect just Amtrak Bachmann releases and have a whole collection of things. Really neat stuff.
Well, we're official licensee of Amtrak, and we work closely with Matt Donnelly of Amtrak, and he reviews all of our stuff, and he reviews it. We make sure it's correct. So it's a lot of back and forth. Colors we have I don't have it here nearby, but we have an official Amtrak paint guide that we have to follow. It's got all the colors spelled out, all the specifications of the widths of the stripes and everything in there. So we work towards that. And these are a little bit different because these are operated by the Department of Transportations in different states. So they're operated by Amtrak crews, but they're actually owned by the Department of Transportation in California and Illinois Department of Transportation and Washington State Department of Transportation. So, that's the difference there. We had to work with a lot of different licensees with this particular project with the Charger.
In reference to that, Larry, I think that is, I don't know that everybody understands that, but we've got 3 paint schemes in this first group: Cascades, Pacific Surfliner, and Midwest. And while you might say, oh yeah, they're all Amtrak, but as you say, well, yes and no. That they're actually state funded, like the 403B trains or whatever they call them, where the states are involved. But now, didn't you mention there will be some just straight out Amtrak coming for the railroad, and what we would assume model versions from you guys in the future? Because right now, those are only on, I think, corridor trains. I see these on our River Runner between St. Louis and Kansas City, but the Southwest Chief from Chicago to LA is still running the old General Electric units, but Amtrak is going to have their own fleet of these at some point, correct?
That's correct. They're replacing their motive power for the long haul. So the contract is already in place, I believe, with Siemens, and they're working to. I think they're supposed to get the first couple units in the spring.
Wow. And again, Tony mentioned the differences in the engines, and the Surfliner. We didn't get all of the engines from Bachmann yet. We're still waiting on another container to come in. Hopefully, I think I was talking to Rich. He was saying maybe in a couple of weeks, so we should get the balance of the Surfliner. But I did see a question on the back. Is it a louvre or the bump? The Surfliner, does that have that on the model, Larry?
Yes, I can show it to you.
Yeah.
So here.
Because Tony was excited. He mentioned the Surfliner as soon as we got it on the show. And
it's an extra piece we modeled. It fits on top of the body, and it goes up in the back.
Now, I'm assuming that's for aerodynamics?
Yeah, they have bi-level cars that are higher than the locomotive that they run out there.
Gotcha.
So it does flow the air up. You can see, you watch YouTube videos, you'll see it on those. So
it's California, Ken. It's a hot ride.
Spoiler.
We don't really have that stuff here. Yeah. This is their, these guys out there in Southern California, they had to have something sleek, so it's got a rear spoiler on it. Yeah.
Too fast, too furious.
Yeah, they took the Tier 4 emissions off and they put a spoiler on it, and it added 1,000 horsepower or something.
Very cool. Very cool.
So are we ready to run through the features of this thing?
Yeah, let's see it, Larry. We've been talking too much.
Okay.
And I will say, this is a great all-star panel that just kind of blended itself together, because I was talking with Larry, and then I said, well, we could have Tony Cook on. He's a great model enthusiast, and I know he's salivating over these engines. And Larry actually mentioned, it would be cool if we had TCS on board. They did the sound system. So I really think we got all aspects of, the whole engine covered. And so it's really cool to see all of this. And we're going to be sending out this email with the Bachmann Charger email that we do. And we'll have the video, so people who couldn't make it tonight will be able to see it. So I think it would be really, really cool for people to really see all the features of this engine. And Tony Cook's is going to be doing a great article. I think he said Q1 of next year, right, Tony?
Yes, yeah. It'll be out in the first couple of months of 2021, modelrailroadnews.com. You can go to get information on the magazine. I see Larry's got it on the easy track, ready to go.
I got it on the easy track. So one of the cool features when you first power this thing up, you get the startup sounds. And so I'm just going to be quiet and turn it on now and see how it goes here. Everybody hear that okay?
Yeah.
So I'll mention one thing about that startup sequence while it just happened there, it's fresh, is you'll hear there toward the end of the startup that wind up. And that's actually the traction motor blowers. And those turn on every time that this locomotive turns on and starts up, it will turn those blowers on. There's a total of, I believe it's 4 of them. It might be 8. I think it's 4. And there's one on each traction motor. And so those would periodically come on and off. But we noticed that you really don't hear them ever while the locomotive is moving. The only time that you're ever going to hear them is when it starts up. So we added that to the startup sequence so you can hear that every time. However, there is a function on the decoder that you can turn them on your own if you'd like to hear them.
So I know Ken wanted to see this in the dark. So I'm going to turn off my studio lights here and show you. How about that, huh?
Isn't that cool? I love that lit up panel in the back, and the strobes have such a great effect. I mean, they have a realistic look to them, and then the lights up front will flash back and forth. I think when you hit the horn, I don't know if that's to be moving. Maybe that's to be moving. There we go.
I'm actually going to take a screenshot of this right now.
Also, they go back and forth when the bell is on as well.
Yeah. I mean, this thing, Ken, when you fire it up between the startup sequence, that light in the back showing the interior, I mean, it comes to life. It's wow. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that people may notice about this is the strobe operation. We had the Siemens operating manual out for this. The strobes will only operate when the headlight and the ditch lights are on. So if you're pressing your button to turn the strobes on and it's not coming on, you check to see if your headlight and your ditch lights are on as well in the locomotive, because that's the way they work on the real locomotive.
Yes, and both the headlight needs to be at full brightness, and the ditch lights don't have dimming, but on the real one they do. So both the headlight and the ditch lights need to be at full brightness in order for those strobes to turn on.
And Larry, how's the pulling power on it? Yellow Bonnet had a question on the pulling power. Is can you get a lot of freight cars or passenger? Oh, I guess
passenger shouldn't have any freight cars behind it, but yeah.
Cars,
I mean, I've seen the videos on the Amtrak models group, and they're having no problems pulling the train. So
cool.
Anything with your models, you want to make sure they're properly lubricated. If you have a good passenger car, it should roll pretty freely, so it shouldn't create a big load for your locomotive. But yeah,
we'll let Tony do the maximum mount test on his leg.
I'll say this: when we do our testing here at our shop, we have I think it's like a 5% grade hill that we have up and down. And I have a freight car that I took an Intermountain F unit and stripped everything off of it. It's just a chassis. And I put that inside of a box car. and I pulled that up the hill, this 5% grade or whatever it is, no problem.
I can't remember. I do an ounces pull test thing on it. I don't remember that, but I do remember this thing. I mean, when you pick it up, it's got heft, and I remember it was a little bit over a pound. I want to say it was like 1 pound 2 ounces. I mean, it's a heavy duty unit. So
the chassis is all die cast. I mean, it's all die cast. So
yeah,
the body itself is plastic, but the interior is a good chunk of die cast. That's for sure.
And I ran scale speed on it too, and I found it came out to, I think I had something in, and Larry, I'm not sure what you got it set up to, but I think it topped out around 90 or so, as I remember. I've not done the exact numbers yet, but in just playing with it and running the digital scale speed thing on it, I think I had it around 90 miles an hour at top speed on DCC. So very smooth and nice.
We actually had it up to 120, didn't we, Dan?
Yeah, we did. The top speed that we recorded out of our model that we had for development was 126.
Okay.
Which that would be correct, wouldn't it, Dan? Because these can do high speed. Yeah,
they're rated for 120 miles an hour, and we were able to get that out of our model. Yep.
Okay.
So it might just needs to be broken a little bit or something. So, but yeah, I can we'll run through some of the sounds here. We have there's the bell. And as you notice, the ditch lights will go back and forth on the bell. There's the long horn, short horn. Let's see what else. We got this sound we started with the ACS 64. It takes a little bit of time. It's called the whoosh sound. This is function 4. This simulates the train going by high speed. Takes a few seconds.
And these were recordings that we got from actual Amtrak passenger service trains running by. Yeah.
So we have that's the whoosh sound. Now the brake is not going to sound because it's not moving. If I start to move it, it's going to go off the table. So I'm not going to do that. But one of the features that Dan was talking about before is if you press the brake a total of 5 times, that's 100% braking. That'll throw it into emergency. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you hear the air dump sound, and now the red. I'll turn the lights out again, see if you can see the red. You see it alternating a little bit with the.
Oh, very cool.
Now, as soon as you do the brake release or any throttle change, it will turn off the. So just turned it off there. One of the things that we have been making the DCC Easy Command system. It's an entry-level system, and we probably made. I tried to get a number from our production, but we've made it probably close to 100,000 units over the years. So we have lots of them out there. And when we came out with the ACS 64, we were like, this thing could do so many things. We want to be able to tap into some of the sound features. So we had like a little round top discussion with TCS, and we said, what can we do to get access to more of the sounds? And what they've come up with is a paging system. So we have, you have your function 1 through 10 buttons on the Easy Command system, but you actually can add 10 to the function if you go into, first of all, you have the light mode option. If you press function 8 on the Easy Command or any command system, it goes in the light mode, and that gives you control of all your lighting features. But if you press function 8 twice again, you go on to page 2, which gives you functions 10 through 19, and then you do it one more time, and you get the last up to 28. So right now on function page 2, let's see, I'm looking at the.
So this is a feature that is exclusive to the Bachmann locomotives, and we started it, I believe, with the first project, which was the ACS 64. It's usable on any DCC command station. It's not limited to the Bachmann Easy Command. So if you have a system that has limited access to functions, or you don't know how to get to the higher function numbers beyond 9, you can use this feature on these decoders to be able to more easily access them. Now, this doesn't remove the ability to use your standard 0 through 28 buttons on your command station. It just equates a certain function to a different button, 1 through 9, or 0 through 9, sorry.
For page
So
2,
for
it adds
people-
10. For page 3, it adds 20. So that's
Right,
basically the
correct. So you're on, on the first page is 0 through 9 is 0 through 9. You go to light mode, and then you still have 0 through 9, but for controlling lights. On page 2, you have functions 10 through 19, and on page 3, it's functions 20 through 28.
And you
So-
get a voice confirmation.
You do get a voice confirmation every time you go through.
That's nice.
And yeah, you go back around the horn, you want to go back, and it's not like it overrides anything. You're not programming anything. Nothing's messed up or weird. And anytime that you power down the locomotive and power it back up, power down the decoder, that is, it will return back to the first page. So you always have a fresh start.
That's a tremendous feature, because I know I do get those questions. As Larry mentioned, there's a lot of those DCC easy commands out there. And even like I do a lot of testing with an older Digitrack Zephyr, and it, is limited to 0 through 9. So again, that ability to step across there, because it's always frustrating when all these cool features, but I don't get those channels on my TV. So
Yeah.
it's nice when
Now you plug in one of those special boxes that gives you all those channels.
exactly.
Exactly. That's a very nice, and the voice thing is good too, because when you're hitting that stuff, did I do it? Have I stepped over there? So when it says it, you've switched to the next page. So that's awesome.
Yeah. We've always had the pagination system to an extent. We've always had light mode and sound mode ever since the first version of our sound decoders. We've also always had audio assist, which is another feature that all of the Spectrum line of models from Bachmann with our sound decoders in them have. And so that allows you to be able to program the decoder, its functions, the sounds, the buttons, the lights. It allows you to program all of that without ever having to consult the manual, without ever having to look up any CV values. Doesn't need CVs at all. It's all internal to the decoder. It's a very nice feature we have in all of our sound decoders. And it's a breeze once you get used to it, and we're glad that we could include it in the Spectrum line of models as well.
So I got now I'm on page 2. I'm going to take you through the prime mover a little bit here, because it's manually notch up. Notch 1, notch 2. Don't really start to make any noise. What, to like notch 3 or 4?
Yeah, I don't know if you can turn the volume up, but that might be nice.
You hear a little better now? It starts to
Now you're
whine.
start hearing that turbo kick in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can go back down now. A lot of great comments we're seeing coming through, Ken. But there's just a ton of sounds we can go through. Like again, I go into page 3.
Function page 3.
So now Tony was saying about the station sounds. We have those.
May I have your attention, please? Now departing on track 4, northbound train number 174. Last call for train number 174 on track 4. Over.
Is that you, Larry?
Yeah, that's me. Jack Lynch was with us at the time when we recorded the announcement, so he's on a few of them too.
May I have your attention, please?
There's Jack.
Now departing on track 2, northbound train number 130. Passengers are advised to proceed to track 2 at this time. All aboard.
So I think there's 6 of each they randomly go through. I can't remember. I think it was 6 of each. 6 departing and 6 arriving sounds. And then going back to Dan's thing about the audio assist, so you go into you press function 8 4 times.
Function. Welcome to Audio Assist. Use button 1 to hear the sound programming options. Use button 2 to hear the lighting programming options. Use button 3 to hear the motor control programming options. Use button 4 to hear additional options. Use button 0 to exit Audio Assist.
So you can just follow the voice prompts.
Use button 1 to adjust sound volumes.
It's basically like
Use
a
button 2
telephone
to map a
operating
sound to
system,
a button.
right?
Exactly.
Use
So,
button 9
and when you're done, you
to
just
return
press,
to the
you
previous
save it,
menu.
and you get out,
Use bye.
and then you're back to your sounds again.
Yep. So here's one thing I'll mention since it's come to mind here for me. In Audio Assist, there's a feature that we include on the decoders, which we call the user presets. It's a way for you to be able to store and load any of 3 different configuration files for the decoder. If you, for example, have one of these locomotives, 2 of these locomotives, 3, whatever, and you want to run them all in a consist, you might have specific consist settings that you want to set up for that unit or those units while they're running together. And you can save those to a user preset. Let's say that's preset 1 out of 3. And then let's say I want to later go on and take it out of the consist and have it run as a single unit. And I could have that saved to preset 2. And instead of having to go through and adjust every single one of those CVs individually and have to memorize them and write them down or have them in a table of JMRI, it's all saved in the decoder, and I have access to those at any time where I can switch back and forth real quick. So for people who are going to be using these in consisting or anything like that, it's a very handy feature.
I mean, it's incredible, that programming. Isn't that wild, Ken? I mean, it's such a fun thing, the way, the talking features and all that. Again, it's more than just, yeah, it's DCC sound equipped. It's only telling you half the story. That, man, there's so many fun things it does.
Yeah, it's truly a beautiful train. Bachmann and TCS did a phenomenal job, just really nice, great team effort. And, this is why it was probably one of the most pre-ordered HO engines this year. The numbers have been just huge. We're nearly sold out on the 3 numbers that we do have in stock, and the one that we still haven't gotten in yet. We'll be expecting in more, but it's just selling very well. And I think once people actually see this engine, pre-ordering is one thing, but then there's a lot of people out there that need to see, hear it, touch, feel it, all of the above, and read about it in MRN. So you get all different people waiting for the reviews and the write-ups and all this aspect. So, this engine is definitely has room where people are just going to order it like crazy. So make sure if you haven't bought one already and you're interested, I mean, definitely stock up now, because it's one of Bachmann's best-selling engines ever.
I'm just doing
We're happy to be a part of that, for sure.
And they're already requesting in G scale, Tony.
Oh, well, G scale, Bachmann's got that. What is it, Larry? A -8 or -9 GE diesels coming. I'm excited about that. So
we're working on that now. So it's always something in
I'll
the
wait
fire.
for that one first. But yeah,
Yep.
This would be awesome out in the garden too, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Now,
And
Larry, on the destination board, you said that's the like amber or gold thing there in the center below the headlights on the
Right.
one. Yeah. Now, and those are unique to each scheme, correct? What are those? What do they say? I mean, in reality, they would, like I think the one would say Kansas City or Chicago in its board. The ones that are out now, what are the 3 different destination boards?
Let's see. The Midwest 4618 has Chicago on it, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking at
Pontiac on that one.
Oh, Pontiac. Okay,
Yeah, and then 4611's got Chicago on it.
Yeah,
the
that's what I
Surfliner. Surfliner has we changed a couple of them because we had Ventura on it originally. People were saying, "No, I don't do Ventura," so we changed that to Los Angeles. And then I think I'm not sure what this one is. I think it's Portland. As soon as I take it off the turntable, I'll tell you what it says.
Here you can hear that 2-stage compressor I was talking about before.
That's a real eye-catching feature, though, having the illuminated destination board.
Yeah.
And just the overall, the windshields are flush fitting with the black gaskets around them. There's wipers. There's the rear view mirror on the side. There's interior cab detail. I mean, it's a real, I mean, the front end of that is such a futuristic, sleek looking unit. And it's so awesome, the detail both across the windshields and the interior as well, that enhances that look.
Yeah, in order to get that, you can't do it all with molded parts. Some of it is actually decoration. When we first showed the first test shots to Siemens, I was like, well, where are the window gaskets? Where's this? I said, it'll all be there when it's done. You just have to, we print the window gaskets with a slightly different color black so that it shows up on the, on the model itself. So there's little tricks of the trade that we do. I know on the model J-Class Norfolk and Western steam engine, they have the running boards on the side. They actually have little raised dots on the running board on the real model. And the way the mold is constructed, it's impossible to do that because the mold comes apart and slides out, so it's a smooth surface. So what we did in that case, we took a extremely dark blue and printed the dots in an extremely dark blue on top of the black, and it shows up and it looks 3D. So pop the
And someone asked about the Cascade, what it says. It says Portland.
Portland, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So,
And for all the Thomas Tankies out there, hang tight. We got an episode coming in the future. So don't fret. But tonight was a Charger night. So
is there any other questions or anything anybody's thrown out?
a lot of people asking about Surfliner passenger cars, Larry.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's the venture cars. So it's also, we also have to have licensing for Amtrak California. So that's another thing we have to overcome. But it's an ongoing process with all this stuff.
And Tony, sorry to cut you off, Larry. Tony,
okay.
do you recall another model ever having like a lighted front like that? I think that's the first for an actual train and a model train.
I mean, certainly for a North American prototype, that destination board, I think bus or that kind of thing. That when these first came out, it seemed wild to see River Runner or Kansas City in that board when we'd see them. Right. So now it's awesome. The other thing too, he's talking about how they printed some of the detail and other things. Did you notice, Ken, on that Midwest sample? Look at that the back panel there by the two handles. It's got the Missouri River Runner name and logo. I mean, the printing on this stuff, and you're gonna have to have a magnifying glass. My eyesight's at going on 55. I know you're younger than me, Ken. You can probably see it.
I got my bifocals on.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Tony.
But isn't that? I mean, this stuff, and we'll have blown up pictures in Model Railroad News of it. But man, that Missouri River Runner and the little warning labels on the different boxes and around the
brake indicator.
Oh, isn't that awesome? I mean, Larry, that's an amazing job. And then the dot pattern and everything you guys did on the lettering is the overall finish is so smooth and silky looking on these. And I noticed that on that Cascade sample, we did the photography and sent it off to the reviewer. And man, the finish is just amazing on these.
Yeah, I mean, when we got our production sample of the Charger that I have here on my desk in front of me, even while it was in the box, I was amazed by how accurate it was to, how it was out there in Colorado. It looked like somebody took the locomotive from out there and crushed it and put it in a box, shrunk it down with a shrink ray or something. Very, very well detailed. Very, very good job on the painting. And yeah, definitely a credit to Bachmann for that.
Well, the graphics were done by my assistant, Mike Tonkinson. He's excellent with Photoshop and Illustrator. We get some of the graphics, so they all have to be placed properly and sized down so that they fit on the model. Sometimes certain dimensions of the model don't always, because of wall thicknesses and stuff, or they don't always exactly match up to the model. So you have to make compensation for that stuff so it looks correct. But he did an excellent job on this.
And Tony was pointing out some of the small details. I mean, there's so much on this engine. So make sure you check out his article when it comes out. And if you don't subscribe to their magazine, it's a great magazine. They have tons of new product. So it's really great. And I actually use it for a source for my guide on what to buy next or stock up on, to be honest, because anything that they're reviewing, it's noteworthy. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are going to be doing a really good article on this. And I expect nothing less from you, Tony.
Thanks, Ken. We got 2 big reviews coming for it. So yeah, it'd be awesome.
Cool. Very good.
You know, I don't know if you guys noticed when I blew the horn there, it's another thing that automatically happens. You know, when you run out of air pressure in a real locomotive, the compressor kicks on. Well, the same thing happens with the TCS decoder. It kicks on until it fills up the pressure again. So just amazing attention to detail these guys did.
Yeah, that's another feature that's on all of our diesel decoders. We have a simulated air reservoir level, and that level is affected by a couple different things, like how many times you use the horn and how many times you use the brakes. And so when you use the brakes a lot, when you use the horn a lot, your air compressor is going to go off. And we also have a configuration that allows you to adjust how leaky the engine is. So it'll actually self-deplete faster or slower depending upon that setting. So it'll determine how often it kicks on and off on its own as well.
All right, guys. Well, this was an excellent coverage topic, and I appreciate everyone for joining us. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, TCS. Thank you, Larry. Great job all around the board. I really appreciate everyone coming.
Ken, I'd like to say one thing before we leave. I'd really like to thank all the people that were involved with this. First of all, Siemens was an incredible help to us. The guy who spearheaded it all, his name was Dave Ward. He's an incredible guy. He got us all the information we needed for engineering drawings. He set up the TTCI recording session out there. We had another Siemens employee, Steve Muting. He coordinated our visit out there, and we had a TTCI employee, Robert. He was our engineer for 2 days, moving the locomotive around. Also, Matt Donnelly from Amtrak. He's a key resource for us as well. So, just thank you all those people out there, and without them, this thing wouldn't have been as good as it is. So.
We need them to make model trains.
Yep, we do.
That's it. Well, thank you everybody out there for joining. We still have some of the road numbers in stock, so shop online at trainworld.com. Thank you, Bachmann. Thank you, TCS. Thank you, Tony from Model Railroad News. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate it. And all the tankies out there that were commenting on this thread, just tell Bachmann to get Doug on the show. We're rooting for him to do a Thomas the Tank special. But it's in the works. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And this was a great Thanksgiving special. So happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And please be safe out there. Be smart. And our thoughts and prayers to everybody out there. Thank you, guys. And have a great night. And shop online at trainworld.com. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Ken.